Hello, thank you for joining us. This is Platform. I'm Ruth Aguele. What is patriotism? Now, this comes with different definitions and expressions, but someone said true patriotism means believing in your country. Now, in this context, we say Nigeria, believing enough to help rebuild it. Patriotism is a sense of showing love, devotion, and service to one's country. Let me digress. The armed forces uniform, according to the force, is more than a fabric. It's allegiance. And this campaign reminds us the future of Nigeria, which must be secured by those willing to stand for her lawfully and with conviction. In recent years, a growing number of Nigerians have been found serving in foreign armed forces, raising serious concerns about national security and loyalty. Nigeria has been ranked fourth among the countries whose citizens were granted U.S. citizenship through military naturalization between 2020 and 2024. And while there isn't comprehensive data on all Nigerians serving in foreign militaries, statistics, however, show a notable number of Nigerians gaining U.S. citizenship through military service, particularly in the U.S. Army. That's between 2020 and 2024. Figures revealed about 3,270 Nigerian-born service members were granted U.S. citizenship through military service. This number has steadily increased each year, going by the year now, from 340 in 2020 to 930 in 2024. From Ukraine to the Middle East, reports of young Nigerians enlisting in foreign militaries are on the rise. The pull factors include promise of better income, foreign passports, and possibly dual citizenship. But at what cost is this? Are there implications of this trend? How can the nation reinforce the value of patriotism, lawful engagement, and civic responsibility? Well, on Platform, we put our spotlight on Nigerians in foreign armed forces and the call for patriotism. And our guest is Air Vice Marshal Olutokunbo Adesonya, retired. Thank you very much for joining us, Air Vice Marshal.
Yes, thank you very much.
I could shut it.
Being here. Olutokunbo, by the way.
Yes, okay. All right, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So before we bring in our panelist, we'll take you through his profile. Air Vice Marshal Olutokunbo Adesonya, retired, is a member of the 37th regular course of the Nigerian Defense Academy, Kaduna, and was commissioned as an officer into the Nigerian Air Force in 1990. He is an aircraft maintenance engineer who is type-rated on the Alpha Jet fighter aircraft. He holds a master's degree in development studies and a first degree in chemistry, while also being a fellow member of several professional bodies. He has also attended many professional military courses. He has made several landmark contributions to the Nigerian Air Force and to the nation. As Nigeria's defense attaché to Moscow, Russia, with concurrent accreditation to 8 other countries, he was instrumental to the signing of a military technical cooperation agreement between Russia and Nigeria. That was in 2021, among other feats recorded. While in service, he made tremendous efforts towards deepening indigenous aircraft maintenance capacity. He holds several combat medals and awards, one of which is the Grand Service Star for 30 years of embellished career as a commissioned officer. Now, he's currently focused on contributing his own quarter to nation building, and we say well done to that.
Thank you very much again.
All right. And our panelist is our in-house, we call him our own GOC, our defense correspondent, Ismail Musa. Thank you for joining us, Ismail.
It's a pleasure having me here once again, Ruth.
All right. So, AVM, I can just say AVM, right?
Yes, please.
We're seeing this trend happening of our young Nigerians, moving to foreign countries to be enlisted into their military. And it's a call for concern because there's also a clarion call back home, for service, for civic responsibility. What would you say is responsible for this growing trend?
There are quite a number of reasons why Nigerians, especially young Nigerians, will choose to serve in the armed forces of other countries. One of them, which I think is quite clear to many, is financial. Many are attracted by promises of good pays, good terms and conditions of service, and they see it as a means to attaining the type of livelihood that they choose or they want or they desire for themselves. So that is a very clear reason. And another reason is that many see it as a pathway to acquiring the citizenship of those other countries. Of course, there are many reasons why one will want to acquire the citizenship of another country. Maybe there are perceived benefits that could come with that. Of course, there are many ways to acquiring citizenship, but it is believed that joining the armed forces of those other countries could also give them that leverage to join or to become citizens of the country. And clearly the other thing, which unknown to many, at least I've had the cause to hear this, is that there are instances where some Nigerians will have been convicted of a crime, either for drug trafficking or any other thing, and so they're already convicted, they are in the prison, and then there are offers made to them. Okay, it's either you spend 10 years or life in this prison, or will you be willing to join our armed forces and go and engage in combat? If you do service in the war front for this period, then you could be released and you become a free agent once again. And of course, many will rather take that risk of joining those armed forces as opposed to remaining in the prison. Yeah. And one thing that I must also add is the fact that some simply join out of ignorance. I say ignorance in the sense that they just say that, oh, just doing another job, unaware of the possible implications that come with joining the armed forces of those countries. But be that as it may, I'll say desperation also is another factor. And as a person, one of my dictums in life is that desperation should never be your motivation. Because when you are desperate, you are likely to make mistakes. When you are desperate, you become vulnerable. So I think these are some of the reasons why Nigerians join the armed forces of other countries.
Before I dish out my question, I would love to say if I've been privileged to join the armed forces, I would have loved to be a pilot, a jet fighter for that matter, sir. Now, you spoke about implications, possible implications. Could the implications be a double sword implication, double-edged sword?
Yes, these implications could be double-edged, and indeed there are implications that are personal, there are some that are legal, and some are diplomatic. Okay. Maybe permit me to start with those I consider as personal implications of joining, or Nigerians joining the armed forces of other countries. The most obvious one is the possibility of bodily harm. That risk of bodily harm, and at the extreme, the possibility of death. Whether we like it or not, once you are not in your own country, it doesn't matter the status that you hold in that other country, you are a second-class citizen. And I know that when it comes to warfare, it is more like a game of chess, where there are situations where you will need to sacrifice a pawn for the king or for the queen or for the bishop to be in a better position towards you attaining your overall objective of winning. So the implication is that when you, as a Nigerian, opt to serve in the armed forces of another country, you will likely become a pawn. So that in warfare, you are likely to be placed in that place that is considered dangerous, most dangerous or more dangerous. And that means you are more liable to bodily harm, to even death at the extreme. And of course, you know that the military is about nobility. Yeah. And the nobility of the military profession is in the sense that you know that you are fighting for your country. And you know that when you die or pay the supreme sacrifice for your country, you'll be recognized as a hero. And once you are a hero, it becomes something that is etched in the history of the country. I remember sometimes in 1998 or thereabout, while I was in Sierra Leone, I was in Liberia and Sierra Leone actually as part of the ECOMOG peacekeeping operations. There was a particular time where it was obvious that we were likely to fall prey to the antics of the rebels at that time. And I recollect that the American embassy actually sent C-130 aircraft, I think from Senegal also, to come and evacuate all American and British nationals from Sierra Leone where we were. They evacuated them, and even United Nations personnel who were serving there abandoned their vehicles and the rest, and they were also evacuated. But we were there, and I remember that day, I was there with some of my colleagues, and one thing was that it never occurred to us to also think of running away. Yes, you might say that it's part of the military training that's been built in us, but we also had an understanding that our presence in Sierra Leone at that time was part of our own contribution to the projection of Nigeria's foreign policy objectives. And we knew that whatsoever will happen, we were fighting for our country, and our country will recognize that.
You know,
But,
AVM, what you said now, some have come up with an argument that peacekeeping, you know, Nigeria have its own foreign policy that they've, like treaties they've signed to. So what's the difference if young people go out there? Is it the same scenario?
It's certainly not the same scenario. It's part of, actually, I will be coming back to, I said something about diplomatic implications.
Yes.
By the time I get there, you'll actually see what I'm talking about, because Nigeria certainly has obligations, and which makes Nigeria to have friendly nations and the rest. So, but when I get there, I expect that it will also answer what you just said. So, I've mentioned this aspect about you not being able to expect that nobility, that sacrifice for your country, because whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter which other country that you decide to enlist in, it is a second country. Then there's also this relevant section of our Constitution, that's Section 28 of the Constitution, which talks about citizenship. And I know that the legal experts might be able to speak more about this, but there are implications of a Nigerian also enlisting in the armed forces of other countries. Certainly, if you are a naturalized Nigerian, you are forbidden from engaging in such. But for a Nigerian by birth, I may not be sure legal experts will be able to contribute in that regard. But certainly, there are risks of the loss of your citizenship when you do this, even though I know that our Constitution provides for dual citizenship. Now, about what you just asked earlier, Nigeria has interest, and our interest normally we based, or as part of attaining those interests, we enter into alliances with other countries. So when you, as a Nigerian, engage in the armed forces of other country, and then you fight against a country that is aligned with Nigeria's interest, what you have done could actually be seen as treasonable. It could be seen as felony. Again, the legal experts will be able to speak more about this. So those are part of the legal implications of joining the armed forces of those other countries. And you know that Nigeria has always had neutrality as its core belief when it comes to international relations. So we have this non-aligned policy. So when you as a Nigerian, you join the armed forces of other countries, and you fight for that other country, and you are caught fighting for that country, certainly what you'll be doing could be seen to be against Nigeria's neutrality. You may say, well, it's not my problem, but one thing is certain: whatever affects Nigeria ultimately will affect you as a citizen. I know when I was talking about those risks earlier, the other one I forgot to mention is you could also be captured as a prisoner of war. It's one of the risks of joining those other forces. And when you are captured as a prisoner of war, believe me, there are certain things that you go through that will remain traumatic with you for the rest of your life. And then you will ask yourself, was it really worth it at the end of the day?
You know, AVM, you're making it sound so... It should be scary, actually. You know, they say information is power. People actually, young people, don't really understand what they're getting themselves into, especially for those who just see it as a means to an end. But how can young people, you know, be protected from falling prey to deceptive incentive offered to them by these foreign recruiters? Because it's the pull factor that definitely pushes them there.
In this regard, we have what I call personal responsibility and then the responsibility of government or government authorities towards dissuading or discouraging Nigerians, young Nigerians, from joining the armed forces of other countries. There are, at the moment, some Nigerians who have joined the armed forces of other countries and they live with one form of regret or the other. I think efforts could be made to identify those Nigerians. When they are identified, then a documentary could be done, you know, where these Nigerians will recount their bitter experiences. And of course, they wouldn't be telling lies. I'm talking of those who have had bitter experiences. And the truth is, let's not deny this. There are possible benefits to young Nigerians joining. We might not deny that fact.
Exactly.
But there is a flip side. So young Nigerians need to know this flip side. And so one of the things that can be done, maybe by the National Orientation Agency, compile this documentary, air it, so that people will know. Another thing is, I think one of the things we are doing right now, you know, the media could invite, you know, military experts, legal experts, diplomatic experts, to come and speak on these issues as a way of creating awareness. Because, like I said, one of the reasons why people will go into this is ignorance.
Yes.
So it's important that all the cards are laid out on the table for them, and then they decide, make an informed decision as to whether they still want to go that way or not. Then, you know, on the part of government, you know, government has to make it more attractive for a young Nigerian to want to join the armed forces of Nigeria. You know, when Nigerians see the military and they see the soldiers being poorly treated, or maybe logistics provisioning not adequate, maybe welfare matters not well attended to, naturally they say no. I mean, the natural instinct of a human being is not to want to suffer. So they naturally want to say, no, 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 I'd rather not join this. So it's important that the government attends adequately to the welfare needs of serving military soldiers and even the retired ones, so that young Nigerians can be attracted to joining the military. Of course, I was talking about an awareness campaign earlier. One part of the awareness campaign could also be to make the armed forces of Nigeria and even other paramilitary organizations more attractive to Nigerians. Let them know that, look, rather than go and join the armed forces of these other countries, there are alternatives, legal alternatives in Nigeria that you could join. And so when you are aware and they say that these alternatives are actually well taken care of, they want to join. But again, it also brings to mind another question. Is there a level playing ground for all qualified Nigerians to be able to join the armed forces of Nigeria and other paramilitary organizations? Because a situation where it is seen that you must know somebody who knows somebody before you can join the armed forces will never augur well for the nation.
Let me take you back to the possible implications of Nigerian citizens joining other nations' armed forces. Based on my little experience working with the military, I will need to understand that there are measures in place to deter or discourage retired military personnel from using their skills negatively, or even using it negative on the country. I guess the debarment allowance is one of them. Now, how does this issue of the debarment allowance or measures, how do they apply to such citizens who served in other countries?
Truly, there is what we call the debarment allowance, which prevents you from using some of the military technical skills that you have acquired in the course of training for other armed forces after you are retired. But this applies only to retired personnel. So if you've never been in the military, obviously you are not debarred ordinarily. Okay. So it doesn't really apply to those other civilians.
Now, my focus is, how do we prevent such youths from using what they learned negatively here back home?
Well, the truth is, we can't give debarment allowance to them. Okay. And the real idea behind the debarment allowance is that the government of Nigeria expended resources to give you these skills. And so we own these skills. And even when you are retired, we want to continue to own these skills, so we pay you this allowance. Do not do this. Now, for these young Nigerians that have acquired some of these skills, either through the internet or any other means, now the government of Nigeria does not own the skills. So what can Nigeria do? It's one of these things I've been talking about. Okay. Letting them know the implications of joining these armed forces or even fighting as mercenaries in some other cases. And like I said, there are so many things that could be done. You know, I was talking about another thing, which is civic education. You know, Nigerians need to know, right from secondary school, primary school, what are their rights, what are their responsibilities, and then what is the significance of patriotism. You know, patriotism could be defined in many ways. I will say, for example, for me, I will say patriotism is putting the interest of Nigeria above my personal interest. Yeah. Whether we like it or not, every individual has interest. But when the interest of Nigeria comes above your personal interest, that is patriotism. Now, it doesn't mean that your personal interest would not be served at the end of the day, but it means it will be served in a fair manner, where it ensures that every other person's personal interests are also catered for. You know, because if it were to be about your own personal interest alone, then it will be selfish and there will be chaos. And it will be ambitious. It's okay to be ambitious, but when you're ignorant and desperate, then it becomes a problem. You know, you just brought out the aspect I was going to bring up on the civic education. It's very crucial because they say setting the foundation right shapes the future. And for these young people in schools, especially when we look at what is in the curriculum for the civic education, are these young minds being, you know, the true values of patriotism, like you said? Is it what is really being imbibed in them? You see, an American citizen would tell you, America first. That is what has been nurtured from a very young age. How do we change that perception, especially capture the young ones, you know, at a very tender age? And even for guardians, for parents, it's a collective responsibility. Okay. Still continuing from where I stopped and in answer to your question, one of the things that engender that patriotic fervor, you know, is knowing that this is my country and that my country will always stand for me. Yeah. Okay. Now, there are certain symbols that depict nationhood, but sometimes we tend to look down on these symbols. The national flag, for example. You know, if you go to America today, in most houses, you'll find the American flag flying on individuals' houses, no miniature flags. Many will put it in their cars. They create stickers. It's all about those 50 stars and the stripes, you know. So everywhere a young American turns to, he sees that symbol of America. it reminds him or her of his allegiance to this nation. And, you know, again, the other thing is America does well by creating heroes, you know, recognizing heroes. So do we have heroes that we also recognize? And what are we doing to also promote these heroes? I'll cite example of the unfortunate loss of a young man, Lieutenant Colonel Abu, I think.
Abu Ali.
Abu Ali. Okay, now, he is, or he was a hero, or he is a hero as the case might be.
Yeah.
You know, he died fighting for this country. But have we done anything extra to show, to let people know that this hero paid the supreme sacrifice for Nigeria and is being duly recognized for it? You know, one of the things I've always talked about is the need to create a military museum in Nigeria. Yes, there are military museums, but I'm talking of a one-of-a-kind museum, and I've seen something like that in Pakistan. In this museum, for example, you'll have, among other things, a place where you'll have pictures of some of these military heroes, and you put a small write-up beneath the picture. This is so-so-so-so person. He lost his life or she lost her life in the process of doing this. And by losing his or her life, this is what Nigeria gained for it. So now, descendants or relatives of such a person can always have access to that place or take people there and show, look, this was my dad, this was my uncle, this was done. The nation recognizes him for it. It's just one among many things that will be done in such a museum. So it's important that people know that, look, I serve a country that will always stand for me when the chips are down.
Yeah. Talking about recognizing heroes, when you travel outside the country, you see how members of the armed forces of other countries, particularly that of the U.S., are well recognized and respected. Why does it seem to differ here back home? Now, what should the military do to change the trend, and what do you expect from Nigerians?
I'm quite happy that you asked that question. After my retirement in 2023, I took a trip to the United States of America, and I remember that while there, on a certain day, I engaged the services of an Uber, you know, to move from place to place, and it happened that it was an elderly woman that was the driver of the Uber. I know, by way of being friendly, she just asked, said, where are you from? I said, Nigeria. I said, what do you do? I said, oh, I'm actually retired. A retired military officer. The moment I said this, she said, oh, thank you for your service, sir. I was quite taken aback. I now had to tell her, I said, no, I didn't say the armed forces of the United States. I said, now. She said, no, you did a military service and we appreciate you for it. And believe me, it was the first time that any civilian will tell me, thank you for your service. So it has been ingrained in the hearts and minds of every American that these soldiers are the ones who are laying their lives on the ground for us. So give them every respect that it deserves. While on the same trip, there was a day I was at the airport. It was a domestic flight. And then when it was time to board, the first set of people that they asked to board, I think, were the invalids, sick, and the rest. And then the next set, they said, if you're a serving member of the United States Armed Forces or a veteran, ahead of first business class. So, you know, these are some things that could be done. I know also somebody will say, look, the Nigerian military or members of the Nigerian military sometimes have their excesses, and they are indeed human beings, and we can never excuse those excesses. But it's a gradual thing. There's a need for a national orientation, for people to actually recognize the sacrifice being made by members of the military. And when people recognize that, they also recognize that this is what keeps this nation standing. You know, sometimes people will say, oh, the terrorism in the Northeast has festered for too long. What is being done? But they also do not know what will have happened to Nigeria if the military personnel who are deployed there are not currently there.
Okay, AVM, I think I should be the second person to say thank you. I told you that before we started the program. The respect and honor I have for the military cannot be overemphasized. But let's take a break. We'll be back for the conversation to continue. Stay tuned.
What are we doing as a nation to, first of all, settle our teeming populace, especially the youth?
NTA's political package with a third eye on the nation's political scene. I am Fisa Ogunfuyi. Welcome.
You have to be very careful giving space to people who are obviously sponsored to further the agenda of some other groups.
There's a lot of questions. A lot of questions in a closed-door sessions. Some of these issues, some of the problems bedeviling of their...
In fact, between June 1st and July 17, 19-point-something billion has left the coffers of the NDDC.
I can say my constituency, they need everything because we don't have anything.
A method for digital literacy is a bot that you can use, you can interact to learn more about digital literacy.
Hello, it's our pleasure to have you join us on platform. I'm Ruth Aguwele.
What is the yardstick for measuring everybody's moral integrity? It's critical at this point in time.
How daunting has that been for the Institute in getting them abreast with all the legislative procedures?
The fact remains that one training workshop is not enough.
Thank you for staying tuned. The conversation is on Nigerians and foreign armed forces and the call for patriotism. AVM, I was just giving my salute, to the military before we took that break. But very important is, what about the aspect of youths in NYSC, who are doing this compulsory service? There's this anthem, youths obey the clarion call. Is there really an understanding of the true meaning of the clarion call? Should we also take this advocacy to the camps, the orientation camps, because they're actually being managed by military personnel? So,
yeah, they are being managed by military personnel partially. As well as some civilian administrators too. Everything possible that needs to be done to ensure that this advocacy is seen by everybody should be done. And I think the NYSC orientation camps are actually a very good
breeding ground
for this. Many Nigerians who go through their education up to the university level are really, in my own opinion, not fully aware of nationhood. They're just going through life, especially these days, want to acquire and then move on to their careers. Really speaking, I think when I look at interactions on the social media, I think nationhood is secondary to many, as opposed to it being the primary thing. And many believe the nation has failed them. But one of the things, like the famous American leader said, do not ask for what Nigeria can do for you. Ask for what you can do for Nigeria. If that becomes the thinking, believe me, many things will change. And at the end of the day, it is Nigerians that will, of course, benefit from this. Many times when Nigerians demarket Nigeria, in the process of trying to criticize governments of the day, it is a good thing to criticize the government of the day in order to keep them up and running. But there should be a distinction between the government of the day and Nigeria as a nation. Because when we demarket Nigeria, especially on the social media, at the end of the day, all Nigerians will still bear the brunt of that demarketing of Nigeria. There are people who are sitting down somewhere and they are looking at the thought patterns of everybody, see on social media what Nigerians are saying about Nigeria. And of course, if I am saying that this is who we are, why should an outsider believe that that's not what I am? Exactly. If I believe that, oh, we're corrupt, oh, everything is bad, everything is bad, drug traffickers, this and that and whatever. So naturally, when you go anywhere carrying the green passport, you say, oh.
That's the eye they look at you.
That's the way they look at you. So we need to really understand it. So I agree, the NYSC camp should be, lectures should be taken. You know, there should be, it should be part of their training curricula. You know, there should be lectures put there on nationhood, on civic duty, on the concept of patriotism. And let them know that, look, it might appear a bit somehow, but really, when you put the nation first, you are the one that will reap the benefit of it.
Right after this, Ruth, don't you think upscaling the campaign at the NYSC level, don't you think it's a bit late? I felt at this primary school level, the social studies should be.
That's the civic education.
That's civic education.
Yeah. We're also saying at the
camp,
yes.
it will be reinforcing.
Okay.
And then again, don't forget that when they are at the camp, they are very fertile minds that are about to go, quote and unquote, into the world.
Yes, and they're ready for greener pasture.
So it's at that point that they should remind them all those things they learned in secondary school, in primary. I know whether you learn it or not. I did some civic studies and while I was in primary school, but it was about passing my examination. I didn't understand what it was about. Okay, what are the duties of this? How many governors? No, those things. But at a stage in life when they are ready to apply knowledge, they need to give them this knowledge again.
Now, there was a program, I Salute a Soldier, I guess it was a foundation, partly being sponsored by the DHQ, Defense Headquarters. Down along the lane, I don't know what happened. I don't know whether you're aware of it. I Salute a Soldier.
Interestingly, I'm actually not aware of it.
I think that program, if it has really stand the test of time, I think it would have addressed a lot of these issues we're discussing here.
Yes, it would, because I will imagine that such a program will focus on letting people know what the military stands for, the significance.
Yes.
You know, while I was in Russia, there was a day I was speaking with a Russian, and I just talked about their military. He just looked at me and said, look, our military is number one. He said for us, our military is number one. And that was in Russia. And obviously everybody knows that in America, they don't joke with the military. So it's important. And that's why I talked about the welfare of the military, the welfare of the veterans. You know, I have been in conditions, in the course of service, that I wonder that ordinarily will I be doing this? But then also, we see the glamorous side of the military, and that might be attractive. But there are quite a number of things that the military goes through that we may not be able to start talking about all of them here. So when we realize that there are people who are losing sleep, who are not seeing families for extended periods of time, all in order to make sure that you and I are sleeping. There are things that should be, as much as possible, encouraged. And that's why I would say we need to let our military be given some of those privileges, while also the military will continue to teach its personnel. They need to be temperate. They need to also respect the civilians. Because at the end of the day, the military remains, under civilian authority. So we must recognize that we are, when I say we are, the military is, because there is a nation, and the nation is made of these civilians.
AVM, when you were reading out some of these things you're saying on the experiences, especially for you who've had first-hand experience outside the country and in the country, one would just wonder, why can't we also have, beyond the program Ismail mentioned, more like an orientation once in a while? I know there's the civil-military engagement. So part of that civil-military engagement, how about teaching, the civilians on this nationhood you're talking about and the power of the military, the essence? It should be part of that civil-military engagement, right?
Interestingly, at the last Nigerian Air Force Day, there was a seminar held, and I was invited as a guest speaker. to speak on civil-military relations. I spoke more on the military side, and then there was this professor who spoke on the civilian side. And one of the things I recommended in my paper at that seminar is that the Air Force could liaise with the appropriate authorities towards ensuring that we begin to teach in the civilian curricula things about the military. Let people know what it means to have the military.
And it's not just about being dreaded, you know.
No, certainly it's not about being dreaded. It's to let them know that this is why the military exists.
Yeah.
Okay? That this military stands to protect you, you know. And then you need to know that it's about mutual respect. You know, I believe that many people, both on the military and the civilian side, get involved in acts only due to ignorance. I remember one day I saw some Nigerian soldiers who were, it was a fighter fleet, and we saw some fighter aircraft, and somebody asked me, said, "Oh, do we have Nigerians that can fly this type of aircraft?"
Can you imagine?
Oh yes, that happened. And you know, as far back as when we were in Liberia, then 1997, 98, the Liberians did not believe that it was Nigerians that were flying the Alpha jet. And then they were even shocked when they saw me and my crew, when we were bringing down the engines of the aircraft, you know, working on the engine, you know, working on the hydraulic systems and the rest. They couldn't believe that there was no single foreigner, either in the operational crew or in the maintenance crew. So, but then, how many Nigerians are aware of this? Now, there was this video, I think it trended a bit, where some Nigerians doing a rehearsal, they were jumping, you know, from the aircraft, you know, para-dropping. And, of course, mistakes could happen. And so there were some, you know, there were accidental issues, and so some either landed where they shouldn't have landed, one or two got injured. And this was what everybody trended with. Meanwhile...
Not the service, the military was putting.
Meanwhile, so what did I do? I had several video clips of successful jumps by Nigerians, so I just sent them out. Meanwhile, we also have foreigners, even in the US, who also have this accident.
Who make
mistakes.
So
they now imagine, oh, this one Nigeria, oh, they can't do it. So it's about not appreciating what you have. Yes. It's important that we appreciate what we have.
While the media have a great role to play in this, on this issue, what will be your charge to the Civil Military Relations Department of the various services and even the defense headquarters regards to these areas? Now, if Nigeria will truly understand what a military personnel pass through and what it all entails, I believe some of these issues could be addressed.
I agree with you. First, I would like to commend the leadership of the various military services for establishing the various departments and directorates and branches of civil-military relations aimed at improving the relations between the civil and the military. And I see truly that even as at now, a lot of effort is being made. One of them, I saw the Nigerian Air Force, for example, is in what is called an open day, where they invite Nigerians to come into the bases, to come and see what they are doing. That is commendable. Nigerians need to know what they have. It's not everything that is secret. There are certain things that can be done without jeopardizing operational interest. So the civil military relations branches and directorates of various services need to continue. It's something that should be sustained, the open day. And the other services could emulate what the Nigerian Air Force is doing in that regard. Then, it's important that sufficient campaign is done using the social media. The social media has become a very veritable tool that should be used by the various civil military branches to promote ideals that would foster good civil military relations. Workshops also need to be held by relevant stakeholders. You know, even at the highest quarters, there are some who make decisions that relate to the military, but they have limited knowledge of how the military functions. For example, if I need to buy a particular bomb of an aircraft, I cannot just go and pick up the bomb. You know, you have to have made an order for some time and then they'll produce. So which means if you're going to release money for this, you release it much ahead.
Okay.
So these are various things that the civil needs to understand, and the military can do a lot by making sure that the military understands, the civil understands this.
AVM, we've actually dwelled more on, building that spirit of patriotism, nationhood, nation building. But there's the aspects that you mentioned at the start of this conversation, what pushes these young people out. How can, government within, I know there are, initiatives out there for the young people, for youths, to thrive in terms of empowerment, but building an enabling environment for them to actually thrive and stay back and ignore the pull factors. What would be your recommendation?
Very clear. The military, the Nigerian military, is an alternative to those other engagements. So make the military attractive. Make serving in the Nigerian military attractive. Make it worthwhile. Secondly, create a level playing ground for all capable Nigerians to join the military. It should not be about who knows who. It should be about who is able to do what, so that when the chips are down, they know that they actually have it in their heart to join the military. Yeah. Because, like I said, the military is not a bed of roses. So that when the chips are down, they will stay, knowing that they wanted this service. But if somebody got in there on a platter of gold, either through the recommendation of somebody or the other, or somebody who is entitled or somebody who is privileged, at the slightest risk, at the slightest discomfort, they wouldn't want to stay.
Yeah.
So I believe the government should do more in terms of making the Nigerian military more attractive, and then encouraging our youth to know that the best thing to do is to aspire to join the Nigerian military. And when you join, you are sure that as long as you are well qualified, you will get into the military.
Even I also strongly advise the CCMS to collaborate with media, different media organizations in the campaign, because I feel the media houses have what it takes to get this message right across strategically. I
agree with you on that too. It was actually in my paper. I said that when you do not give the media the relationship, the right relationship, then you're at best going to remain closed door.
Yeah.
The best way for any, in fact, one of the things I even recommended was to see the possibility of ensuring that the public relations departments of the various services are linked to the civil military relations directorate or branches, so that they work hand in hand, because you cannot promote civil military relations without the public relations, the media being fully involved.
So, AVM, as we wind down this conversation, a lot, has, I'm sure, pricked conscience. But going forward beyond this talk we're having here, what do you envisage for our country? What do you envisage for the young person? What would you tell parents out there on the kind of values they, imbibe in their children, and what society, contributes in pushing these young ones and taking, wrong decisions?
The role of the parents in building the child is that of primacy. It's very, very important, because on many occasions, it is what the parents put in the children that they grow with.
Yeah.
Sometimes the teachers will add their own, but what the parents believe will also manifest in what the children end up believing and who they become.
Yeah.
It is every single child who grows up, that's just this, it's every single child is a unit of the society. So if we have each child being well brought up with the right values, we'll have a better society. And for me, I remain an avowed Nigerian who believes that irrespective of what challenges we may be facing now, Nigeria remains the best country for me to live in. Nigeria remains the best country for me to serve. Because anywhere else I've been to, I've been a second-class citizen. So, and anywhere else you go to, you'll be a second-class citizen. Nigeria is the best place for me to thrive, and Nigeria is where I'd rather stay.
Thank you so much, Air Vice Marshal Olatokunbo Adesanya, retired. Thank you for your contribution and lending your voice to this issue is very important. And well done for what you do even after service. Well done.
The pleasure is mine, and I actually just see it as giving back to the country for the much that the country has also expended in me.
Thank you very much. Our own GOC, Ismail Musa, thank you so much. Our defense correspondent, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, so the conversation has been on Nigerians in foreign armed forces and the call for patriotism. Where is your allegiance, I will ask? Because the military, from what we have heard, it's about nobility and loyalty. So where is your loyalty? For me, I will stand for nationhood, I will stand for one Nigeria, and I will continue to salute our military men and women out there. And that's Platform. I'm Ruth Aguele. Bye.